In 753 BC, two brothers, Romulus and Remus, were tending their livestock in ancient Latium near the Tiber River. What began as a peaceful day quickly changed as dark clouds gathered and rain poured relentlessly. The Tiber River swelled beyond its banks, and the brothers were caught in a violent flood, swept away by the raging current. Eventually, they wash ashore unconscious, deep in the territory of Alba Longa. When they come to Alba Longa's soldiers capture them and throw them into slavery. There, a brutal tradition awaits. Prisoners are forced to fight each other to the death in a ritual that supposedly empowers the ruling elite. As night falls, Romulus is chosen to enter the deadly arena, but Remus boldly volunteers to fight in his place. The crowd is stunned. What they don't realize is that Remus has a daring plan: to fake his death, seize a weapon, and lead their escape. Remus then springs into action, grabs a weapon, and triggers a massive slave uprising inside the arena. Chaos erupts, and in that moment, the legend is born. This is the first king. But amid the frenzy, Romulus is momentarily distracted, and an Alba Longa guard strikes, stabbing him with a spear. Thankfully, it's not a fatal blow, but he's left severely wounded and barely hanging on. After escaping the horrors of slavery, Remus and the freed rebels capture Satnii, a Vestal priest carrying the sacred fire, hoping this hostage will keep the Alba Longa soldiers from chasing them. But their escape is far from over. Soon, they find their path blocked by the raging river, still swollen from the earlier flood. With no way across, Remus leads the group into a dangerous alternative, a forest feared by all. Legends say it's cursed, haunted by dark spirits and deadly creatures, but with no time to waste, they push forward into the shadows. Meanwhile, Romulus's condition worsens. His infected wound leaves him barely able to stand, let alone travel. Tension rises among the group. Some begin to argue that Romulus is a burden and should be left behind if they want to survive. But Lux Il Muto's voice remains steady. Fiercely loyal, he refuses to abandon Romulus. He reminds everyone that it was Romulus and Remus who ignited the rebellion and risked their lives for the freedom of all. Without their courage, none of the rebels would have escaped Alba Longa alive. As night falls over the cursed forest, the group sets up a small camp under the towering trees. But the darkness, mixed with fear and exhaustion, presses down hard on the rebels. Unable to bear the tension, one frightened member decides to venture off on his own. He believes he can find a way out by traveling through the forest at night. Despite the group's warnings, he leaves with only a few supplies and disappears into the shadows. The next morning, they shockingly discover his mangled body, ripped apart by something savage. No one could say if it was a wild animal or something far worse. One thing is clear: the forest curse is terrifyingly real. Days pass, heavy with fear and silence. Romulus grows weaker, barely clinging to life. Then, Remus catches one of the rebels trying to kill his unconscious brother, desperate to free the group of what he sees as dead weight. But Remus acts fast. Fueled by rage and loyalty, Remus saves Romulus and unleashes his fury on the traitor. As he beats him into submission, he recalls his mother's final words, urging him to always protect his brother no matter the cost. That moment changes everything, and Remus takes full control. He declares himself the group's leader and lays down strict rules. From now on, no one touches Romulus, and no decision is made without his command. The rebellion is no longer just about freedom, it's about family and survival. One day, a weak and starving Romulus asked his brother for food. Moved by his condition, Remus decided to risk everything and hunt alone in the cursed forest. Before leaving, he asked Satnii to stay and watch over Romulus. It was a bold move, considering no one had ever returned alive from a solo hunt in that place. But when morning came, everyone was stunned. Remus emerged from the woods, alive and carrying a massive deer over his shoulders. Not only had he survived, he had conquered the forest. He shared the meat with the group and gave the deer's heart to Romulus, believing it would help speed up his recovery. Impressed by Remus's bravery, Satnii began tending to Romulus's wounds using the healing knowledge passed down to her as a Vestal priestess. Thanks to her care, the infection was kept under control, and Romulus slowly started to regain strength, though he was still far from fully healed. The following day, Remus's confidence reached a new high. Declaring himself king, he reminded everyone of how he had saved them. He then took the next step, organizing raids on nearby villages. He believed that with their current strength, they could take over the area and build a new life. And he was right. One by one, the villages at the edge of the forest fell. Each victory brought more power, and Remus crowned himself chief over them all. With success fueling his ambition, he started to believe that ruling was his true purpose. But Satni began to notice something strange. While watching Remus at the river, she sensed something beyond human in him. His aura felt powerful, almost divine. It convinced her even more that Remus might not just be a man, but someone born with the blood of the gods. That night, the villagers gathered for a solemn ceremony to honor their ancestors and release the spirits of the dead. During the ritual, Satni delivered a chilling prophecy. She proclaimed that one of the two brothers was destined to become the ruler of the greatest kingdom the world had ever known. But there was a cost. According to the prophecy, for that kingdom to rise, one brother must die as a sacrifice. The revelation sent a shockwave through the crowd and left Remus shaken, torn between his growing ambition and his loyalty to Romulus. Haunted by the prophecy, Remus struggled to make sense of it. He feared Satni was asking him to kill his brother, something he refused to consider. Romulus had been a hero in their escape from slavery, and Remus had sworn to their mother he would always protect them. Consumed by confusion and suspicion, Remus lashed out. He became convinced that Satni had an ulterior motive, trying to turn him against Romulus. In a fit of rage, he tied her up and abandoned her deep in the forest, leaving her to face whatever dangers lurked there. The next morning, Remus returned to the village and was stunned. Romulus had made a full recovery. His rapid healing only deepened the belief that they carried divine blood. But instead of bringing peace, this miracle pushed Remus deeper into obsession. Driven by his thirst for power and resentment toward the gods, Remus made a drastic move. He set the entire village on fire, declaring it a symbol of his rebellion against divine fate. His actions split the community, pitting the freed slaves against the original villagers. In the flames, the village chief perished, though Remus claimed the destruction was meant to eliminate threats to Romulus. After the flames had died down, guilt began to weigh on Remus. He rushed back into the forest to rescue Satni, but it was too late. She had been mauled by wild animals and was barely clinging to life. In her final breath, Satni gave one last warning. If Remus refused to kill Romulus, then he would likely die at his brother's hand. Her words haunted him. Fearing the prophecy might come true, Remus fled with his followers to the Tiber region, leaving Romulus behind. Back in the village, Romulus was chosen as the new tribal chief by those who still believed in him. He reignited the sacred flame that Remus had destroyed and restored its spiritual importance by appointing a woman to guard it. This act marked the birth of the Vestal priestesses, a sacred order tasked with keeping the fire alive. Not long after, Romulus learned that Albalonga's cavalry was closing in, still hunting them for the rebellion in the arena. Without hesitation, he rallied the villagers to defend Remus and his group from the incoming threat. Meanwhile, Remus and his men had reached the banks of the Tiber River, preparing to cross. Suddenly, Albalonga's forces launched a surprise attack. Outnumbered and cornered, Remus's men fell one after another under the onslaught. Just as all seemed lost, Romulus arrived with reinforcements. His timing turned the tide. A brutal clash broke out on the riverbank, and with smart tactics and relentless determination, the brothers led their forces to a hard-fought victory over the Albalonga troops. But what should have been a triumphant reunion quickly turned bitter. Remus demanded Romulus abandon the old gods and insisted the villagers he brought should serve under his rule. Romulus refused. He remained committed to the spiritual traditions passed down from their ancestors. Tensions exploded when Romulus's people stopped an attempted coup by one of Remus's loyalists. Satni's prophecy echoed in both brothers' minds. With no middle ground left, Remus challenged Romulus to a final duel. Two brothers, once united, now stood face to face with swords drawn, ready to decide who would live and who would rule. The final battle erupted with Remus launching a relentless assault. Romulus was pushed to the brink, knocked to the ground, and nearly defeated. But in a split second, when Remus dropped his guard, Romulus struck back. His sword pierced Remus's body, bringing his brother to his knees. As he lay dying, Remus didn't beg for mercy. Instead, he asked Romulus to finish the job and fulfill the prophecy. With his final breath, he urged Romulus to build a great city across the Tiber River as a tribute to his sacrifice. Heartbroken but determined, Romulus honored that wish. He led the remaining group across the river to the chosen land. There, he held a solemn funeral, burning Remus's body according to ancient custom. As a symbol of loss and legacy, he named the city Roma, in memory of the brother whose blood paved the way. In the epilogue, the year is 753 BC. Romulus officially founded the city of Rome, opening its gates to outcasts, traitors, the poor, and criminals, giving them a second chance. He ruled for 37 years, until 716 BC, when he vanished without a trace. So the moral of the story is, never let prophecy mess up your sibling bond. Family fights are tougher than any curse or flood.